Today we're going to be talking about representing linear functions. There are three different ways that you can recognize these linear functions. The first way is through an equation. The second way is through a table of values. And the third way is through a graph. Now all three of these actually represent the same exact thing. So this equation right here and this table of values actually go together. When you take the equation, write it in a table of values, you can then graph and you'll see that it makes a straight line. As an introduction to this lesson, let's go ahead and do an example. Peaches cost $1.50 per can. If you look at the table of values that we have here, we have the number of cans, we have that the cost is $1.50 per can, and then we have the total cost, which is also known as Y. What I would like you to do is go ahead and complete the table to find the cost of 2, 3, and 4 cans of peaches. Pause this video, complete your table, and then restart the video in order to check your answer. Okay, so now in the second column, what we should have is we should have that it costs $1.50 times 2 in order to find the cost of 2 cans of peaches. That would be $3. And then we have $1.50 times 3, which would be $4.50. And then we have $1.50 times 4, which would be $6 for 4 cans. Part B of the question says, on grid paper, graph the ordered pairs, number, comma, cost, and then draw a line through the points. So what we're going to do is we're going to graph each of our pieces from this table onto our coordinate grid. So 1 can costs $1.50. I'll do this one with you. So we need to go to the right for 1 can, and then we're going up to $1.50, and that's where we're going to put our first point. Go ahead, pause the video, graph the number of cans: 2 for $3, 3 for $4.50, and 4 for $6. Okay, for 2 cans, it costs $3, so we're going to go to the right 2 and up to $3, and that's where our next point's going to be. For 3 cans, it costs $4.50, so here's where our next point is going to be. And then for 4 cans, it costs $6, and so here's where our final point is going to be. Once we connect all of these dots, we will notice that it forms a straight line, so we make our line go straight through all of the points, extending beyond the graph, and then making sure that you have those arrows on the end to show that it goes on forever. The last part of this example, it says to write an equation representing the relationship between the number of cans, X, and the cost, Y. So Y represents the total cost, and X represents the number of cans. So in order to fill out our equation, we need to know the unit cost. How much does it cost per can? It costs $1.50. And so the total cost is equal to $1.50 times the number of cans. And that's your equation. Good job. Now we're going to go ahead and do an example of making a table of values from an equation. Here it says, find 4 solutions of y equals x minus 2. We're going to choose 4 values for x, then substitute each value into the equation and solve for y. Go ahead and make a table of values in your notes, looking like the one that's on the screen. At the top of the first column, that's going to be our x column. Then we're going to have our equation, which is y equals x minus 2. And then we have a column for y. And then we have a column for what our ordered pair will be. I'm going to go ahead and give you the values for x that we're going to use in this equation. So go ahead and we're going to choose -2. Then we're going to choose 0. Then we're going to choose 2 and 4. Since we know these are our x values, let's go ahead and get them ready over in our column for our x and y coordinate. So over on the right-hand side, let's go ahead. Our x coordinate is -2 for the first one. Our x coordinate is 0 for the second one. X coordinate is 2 for the third. And then we have an x coordinate of 4. In order to figure out what the y-coordinate is going to be, we need to use our equation. What we're going to take is we're going to take x minus 2 and substitute in our values of x for the x in the equation. For example, if we plug in negative 2 for x, I end up with negative 2 minus 2, which is negative 4. That means that y is equal to negative 4, and I can put it over in my ordered pair. Now we're going to plug in 0 for x. So we end up with 0 minus 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So our y-coordinate for that one is negative 2. Now we're going to plug in 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So our y-coordinate is 0. And then we're going to plug in 4 minus 2, which equals 2. Now, if we were to go ahead and actually graph these 4 points right here, we would find that they would make a straight line. One way to check your answer would be to look at your points, and if they don't make a straight line, that means you made a mistake somewhere, and you should go back to your table and find where you made a mistake in the math. Let's try another example. For example number 2, we're going to go ahead and find the solutions for y equals x plus 5. Pause the video, go ahead and make your table of values, and then unpause when you're ready to continue. Remember that the top columns, we have x in the first column. Then we have our equation, y equals x plus 5. Then we have y, and then our ordered pairs, x comma y. Now there's a side note right here that it says if you need to pick your own values for x, choose one negative value, 0, and 2 positive values. Let's go ahead and use the same ones that we used before. We had negative 2 for our first one. Then we had 0, and then 2 and 4. Now let's go ahead and put those in our ordered pairs. Negative 2 for the first one, 0, 2, and 4. In order to find the y-coordinate, we need to go ahead and use our equation. So we're taking all of our x values and adding 5 to them. For our first one, we would have negative 2 plus 5, which is 3. For our second one, we have 0 plus 5, which is 5. Pause the video, go ahead and finish your table of values, and then we'll check your answer. When we plug in 2, we would have 2 plus 5, which is 7. And then 4 plus 5, which is 9. Again, if we were to graph all 4 of these points on a coordinate grid, we would see that they make a straight line. Now let's go ahead and graph a line from a table of values from an equation. So draw your table of values. When you draw your coordinate grid, it can be hard to do that on lined paper, and so I would recommend drawing your x and y axis and then spacing out five equally spaced tick marks in all directions. Go ahead and label your rows. I'll give you the x values for this one, and then you should try filling out the chart on your own. Again, let's do negative 2, 0, 2, and 4. Go ahead and pause, fill in your chart, and then continue to check your answer. Okay, so we have 2 times negative 2 minus 1, which would be negative 4 minus 1, which is negative 5. So negative 2, negative 5 is our first ordered pair. 2 times 0 minus 1 would be 0 minus 1, which is negative 1. So 0, negative 1 is our next point. 2 times 2 minus 1 is 4 minus 1, which is 3. So 2 comma 3. And lastly, 2 times 4 minus 1, which would be 7. So 4 comma 7. Okay, so now let's go ahead and graph our points. If you haven't done so yet, go ahead and pause, graph your points, and let's see if it makes a straight line. If you've already done so, let's just continue. -2, -5 first, followed by 0, -1, followed by 2, 3. And the last one, 4, 7, is kind of off my graph. So since I already have 3 points here, I'm going to stop there. I can connect the points as best I can, extending beyond the graph and making sure I have arrows on both ends. Good job. Let's go ahead and do our final example for today. Go ahead and label in your table. We have y equals x plus 1. Y, and then x comma y. I'll go ahead and give you your values for x. Let's go ahead and pick something different this time. Let's do -3, 0, 1, and +3. Go ahead and pause the video, complete the entire problem, and then go ahead and come back and check your answer. Okay, here is our answer. We have -3 plus 1, which is -2. So that means our first point is going to be -3, -2. Then we have 0 plus 1, which is 1. That gives us a point of 0, 1. Then we have 1 plus 1, which is 2. And lastly, 3 plus 1, which is 4. So our final point is 3, 4. Now on our graph, we're going to go ahead and go to -3, -2. There's our first point. 0, 1, 1, 2, and 3, 4. Even though they're spaced out, you can clearly see that they are going to form a straight line. So very carefully, we're going to go ahead and extend that line beyond the graph and put arrows on both ends. Nice job. That is the end of our lesson on graphing linear functions.